If you've always had issues with a creeping bass drum, one that's just sliding away from you while you're playing, then you're going to want to stick around for this video, because today we are going to do a product shootout on bass drum anchoring systems. This is a project I've been wanting to do for a long time now. It's been a bit in the works. You follow me on Instagram, then I've been posting about it for probably a few weeks now. But I'm crazy excited about it because I think it turned out pretty cool. And I've written about the dreaded bass drum creep on my website, and that article got quite a bit of response. So I figure now that I'm on YouTube, why not just blow it out of the water here? And if we're just meeting, my name's Alex. You can call me Turk if you like. My passions are teaching and drums, which makes this channel my happy place. And I hope it's yours too. And there's so much to talk about here that this is turning into a 3-part series. In this first part, we're going to talk about anchors that are specifically designed for hard surfaces like hardwood floors or concrete. In the next installment, which will be out next week, we will talk about anchors specifically for carpet. And then in the third installment, I'm actually going to run you through some ideas for how you can DIY it and make your own bass drum anchoring. All the products I'm talking about today are going to be linked down below in the description. So if you fancy one of the other products and you want to pick it up, would appreciate you using the link because I do get some kickback and it helps support what I do here. Okay, so before we get into the details and the scoring and the videos and all that fun stuff, I want to talk a little bit about my methods and the scoring that I've used here. It's a combination of my odd love of spreadsheets as well as a bit of Mythbusters involved. In fact, hold on. I actually made a bit of a, Mythbusters style measuring yardstick thing. Because I really wanted to provide some sort of measurement for how far the bass drum was actually moving. So you'll see this prominently displayed in the videos that I've shot. Additionally, I've made a bit of a scoring system, which basically pits all of the bass drum anchors against each other in various categories. The categories that we've got are performance, simplicity. I think simplicity is perhaps a little underrated. Durability, permanence. And by permanence, I mean, is it something that you set up and leave there forever? Or is it something that you can quickly and easily pack up and take away? Aesthetics. What does it actually look like? Packaging. So it may seem trivial, but some of the packaging that I encountered was a little bit problematic. Setup, teardown, and packing was another consideration. Because if you're gigging a lot, you're not going to want something that is a bit of a pain to kind of change up and set up and tear down. And lastly, overall functionality. Now, I've thrown all these factors into a spreadsheet and I've made basically percentile calculations for every one of these systems. So the reason why I bring all this up is, well, first off, I don't want you to think that I just kind of picked my favorite. I put some effort into actually picking something that you might find useful. And second of all, you're going to want to stick around till the end of the video because that's when I'm going to reveal the scores to you. And you're going to know who the winner is in each category. If you're enjoying yourself, I would appreciate you go ahead and hitting the like button because it does help support a small creator like myself. Also, subscribe with notifications on because I do release new content all the time and you're not going to want to miss out. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to unbox everything. We're going to simply take everything out of the package, give it an initial inspection and my first impressions on the product itself. I think packaging has a lot to do with, not only your first impression of the product, but just in general, how much thought was put into the packaging tells you a little bit about the product itself. Then after that, one by one, we're going to stick them on a bass drum and I'm going to play them each for about 5 minutes or so. I've got a basic hi-hat, bass drum, snare drum setup. We're going to play each for 5 minutes. I'll tell you this, a few of them probably won't last 5 minutes. And then at the end, I'm going to run you through the scores. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. All right, so this first product we're going to look at is the classic Gibraltar anchor that's been around for a long time. I mean, you can see this type of product basically on old videos, even from the 50s, 60s, or whatever. Packaging is your standard Gibraltar shrink-wrapped packaging, and I found this to be extremely frustrating. That's no different than Gibraltar packaging has been throughout the years. Just getting it off is a chore.
5 hours later.
First impressions are, the build quality is nice on it. The hardware is nicely chromed. It goes together pretty easily. It seems to be relatively durable. Overall first impressions are pretty positive, though skepticism is high. Do want to give a brief shout out to Gibraltar, as they did send me a couple things to include in this review, so I appreciate it. Definitely not a paid advertisement, but they were nice enough to send me some product samples to include in the Shootout. And speaking of folks who sent me product to review, I also want to shout out Will and Jay from KBrakes. They were nice enough to reach out to me and send me a sample as well, so I appreciate that. Again, not a paid advertisement, but they were nice enough to send me a sample and some reading material, so thanks. The packaging for the KBrakes is super straightforward. It's nicely packaged in a bag. You see the product there is super simple. That's part of what I really like about the KBrakes. But it also includes some nice reading material in the packaging and some basic instructions, which I find to be lacking in a lot of packaging for this type of product. So good job there. Will and Jay also sent along a couple of brochures of some of the things they've been working on. Will is a working drummer, so he uses KBrakes. KBrakes was developed out of necessity there. And so they just have a great story, and I really appreciate them. Drum brakes came through, sent me a couple samples, so thanks again for that. I can say similar things to the packaging here. It's simple, has some instructions on it. It's nice and clean, and it does come in a 4-pack. So first initial impressions of the drum brakes, it's a nice sticky feel, but not overly sticky. It's going to adhere to hard surfaces, you can tell right away. So looking forward to trying these out. Next up are the KBrakes. KBrakes come in a couple of different flavors, and so there's an addition to the KBrakes that allow you to, mount or have it run on hard surfaces. And so this is one of the few products that's actually applicable for both carpeted and hard surfaces. So that's quite intriguing. Packaging is pretty standard, though kind of a pain as well, but whatever. And getting them out, it's pretty straightforward as to how they're going to mount. Construction quality seems to be pretty good. The only kind of questionable area I do have is around the wing nut assembly up there. It does seem a little bit kind of not as durable as I would have liked, or not as substantial as I would have liked. And then the addition to the KBrakes is the grips, as they call them, and those grips are similar to how the drum brakes feel in terms of the bottom of them. Similar material, so it does stick to, quote unquote, stick to hard surfaces. It's not a sticker, but it's more of a friction type of adhesion. One really frustrating thing about KBrakes that I found was that they're, if you're wanting to use them on a hard surface, the getting them into the grips is a bit tough, and that could be viewed as a good thing. But getting them in and out of there, like if you had to switch, to a carpet setup from a hardwood setup and vice versa, I think that would be a little bit of a challenge just to go back and forth. So, not ideal from a setup and teardown perspective. All right, next are from Benson Music. We've got some kick straps that we ordered. And these kick straps, I think one of the beautiful things about them is they're super simple. Essentially what it is, it's a cargo strap that clips to the underside of your pedal board and then runs all the way back to your drum throne via cargo strap. So there's a hook that just hooks onto, whatever part of the throne is within reach or makes sense for your setup. Simple packaging, simple setup. I do wish there was a little bit of reading material as part of the packaging, or at least on this sticker. Because, for instance, one of the questions I had immediately is on the hook, do you remove that little sleeve or not? Turns out you don't. The sleeve is somewhat protective, but, would have been nice to have a little bit of reading material. But again, looking forward to this one. Gibraltar also sent along another product called Stand Firm. They make these for bass drums, which is the larger version. They also make them for stands. This is a carpet only type of solution, and so on the bass drum version here, you can see the little hole where the spur goes in, and the Velcro that attaches to the carpet itself. So it's a very relatively clean design, non-obtrusive. Seems like it can be packed nicely into a case. And so you've got the larger bass drum versions, and you've also got smaller versions there specifically for stands, hi-hat stands, snare stands, cymbal stands, whatever ends up creeping on you a little bit. I think probably you would use this on a hi-hat stand. I don't think you would put this on every single stand that you had unless you really wanted to. So first up in our shootout is, well, nothing really. It's the bass drum itself. Having a good bass line upon which to build is important. In this case, we are starting with the bass drum just on my hardwood floor here, which is actually a vinyl floor. But regardless, I tried to play for 5 minutes, but I think in total this is sped up 2x, and I think in total this was about 1.5 minutes of playing, and the bass drum was just completely off scale here. Yeah, so this is the classic problem that we're trying to solve with all of these products. This is the bass drum creep at its most severe, and so this is our bass line. Okay, so here we are with our first product. We decided to start with the drum brakes, as we are on a hard surface here. This is me awkwardly trying to take the cover off with one hand and holding the camera with the other hand. But you see here, essentially you want to take both of the plastic covers off, and then you're going to essentially just put it on the floor underneath whatever it is you're trying to keep in place. In this case, for this test, I decided to go with 3 drum brakes. I put one underneath each spur, and then I put another underneath the base of the bass drum pedal where it met the ground. So super simple to install, very easy, didn't take a whole lot of effort, and also non-obtrusive. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that these were even part of your setup if you weren't looking for them specifically. Now, as to the playing experience, you'll see here there is very, very little movement with the bass drum. In fact, I felt like this was an incredibly solid playing experience. I had no worries about the bass drum moving whatsoever, and so it just felt very natural, and I felt confident because of it. So the bass drum just stayed in put, didn't move hardly at all, and I was able to make it the entire 5 minutes without any movement at all in the bass drum. And as you can see here at the end, 5 minutes later, no movement at all. Taking them off is super easy, and they recommend just keeping those plastic covers around so that when you move them around, they don't get dirty. Now, I do worry slightly about the durability of the drum brakes, because they will collect dirt over time, which you can wash off of these. The other piece you have to be careful of is, and they specifically on the packaging, not to have the spike of the bass drum spur protruding out of the bottom, as that could damage it. Okay, next up we have the Gibraltar bass drum anchor, that classic bass drum anchor. This is a unique product because, well, this is a product, as I mentioned, has been around for ages. It is designed to work on both hard surfaces with the plastic neoprene legs or feet, as well as it's got the spikes on there for carpet. So this is another product we'll be testing on both hard and carpeted surfaces. Installation's pretty straightforward. You mount the bracket to your hoop and make sure the appropriate side is facing down, and off you go. My recommendation, just for stability, is to have the spurs down as well. Otherwise, your drum is going to be rocking side to side, as you can kind of see here. So you can just lower your spurs down to where essentially you'll have 4 points of contact with your hard surface and a little bit of stability in the drum. Now, as I start playing, first thing you'll notice is my bass drum is moving. It is moving. It is on the move. The anchor itself is adding, yes, 2 points of contact with the ground from the bass drum. However, it's just not enough to keep the bass drum from moving. So this is another example of where I didn't make it 5 minutes in this test. And in fact, I think it was slightly better than not having them. So there's that. But you see it's still not a viable solution. So as you can tell from this test, it's probably going to get some pretty low scores here at the end of the video. Okay, KBrakes are next. Now I'm using the KBrakes in conjunction with their grips product, which is essentially a flat kind of adhesive, not adhesive, but a friction surface into which the KBrakes mount. As I mentioned in the unboxing, I found this to be a little bit tough to do. It's a little bit tough to get the KBrakes in and out of their grips. However, with a little bit of muscle power, you can do it pretty easily. And you take the protective cover off the bottom. Now, the next thing you'll have to do is you have to take the rubber tip off of your spur, and the spur will just mount directly into the K-brake, and then you can tighten the wing nut there to keep it securely on. Probably the most effective way to mount the K-brakes is at a 45-degree angle to the center line of the bass drum, so that it protects against not only forward movement but sideward movement. You can tell by me just tugging on it how securely this keeps the bass drum spur onto that surface. It really almost feels like it's a sticker or an adhesive, but it's not. KBrakes do a really good job of actually keeping the drum on the ground. Now, as I start playing, you do notice some movement in the drum itself. And this is an odd phenomenon, and it feels weird when you're playing it, I gotta be honest. The adhesion to the floor is so strong with these K-brakes that it essentially makes the back end of the bass drum buck up a little bit at every time you hit the drum. It's a really weird playing experience, and I have to be honest, while the K-brakes technically do their job keeping the bass drum in place, the movement of the drum is disconcerting, and it just feels weird because not only is the drum moving, but your bass drum pedal is moving along with it. And again, it's doing that because there's so much adhesion to the ground from the K-brake that it just the actual force playing on the drum makes the front end of the drum move around like crazy. So K-brakes did their job, but I did not enjoy the playing experience. So it goes without saying, I made it the entire 5 minutes playing with the K-brakes. Removing the K-brakes from the drum is essentially quite easy. I'm not 100% certain that I would want to leave the K-brakes on when I put the drum in the case, although I'm sure it's entirely possible because they do kind of fold away and tuck away. But if if you are playing in this exact same scenario, exact same venue on the exact same surfaces or something like that every single night, you can probably just keep these things on, put them in your case, and you'll be fine. If you play at various venues and environments all the time, this is going to be probably a difficult solution for you to get along with in the long term, because you're going to have to continually switch things out. Take them on, take them off, put the grips on, put the grips off. Getting the grips on while the K-brake is on the drum is probably not viable. So, when you have to switch, you have to take the K-brake off and do all that. The other piece that speaks perhaps a little bit to my OCD-ness, or speaks a little bit to my, needing to keep things together, is the rubber foot that you have to take off of the spur. You got to make sure to keep that somewhere. And if you keep the K-brake on the drum, then those will likely get lost somewhere. And if you ever need them, then you're out of luck. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of hardware considerations with the K-brakes that also I don't personally like. So the last solution, or the last product that we're going to be talking about in this video is going to be the Benson Music kick strap, which is a very simple solution that I enjoyed quite a bit just because of its simplicity. So the kick strap was an interesting playing experience because it did its job very, very well. The drum stayed in place. It did not move, with one exception. If the way to mount it on the drum is you put the strap underneath the pedal board, you put it back onto, hook the other end onto the drum throne, then you tighten the strap. If you don't tighten the strap all the way, there's going to be a little bit of movement right off the bat until that strap gets its full tension. Other than that, bass drum did not move at all. I think the solution itself is super simple and very clean. I did make it all the way through to the 5-minute mark. And, the genius about this is you can also use it on a hi-hat stand, for instance. It's a very versatile item. I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to use it on a floor-mounted cowbell with a bass drum pedal as well. So I am a fan of the Benson kick strap for sure. And it can be used on both carpeted and hard surfaces. And again, in the next video, we are going to be talking about all those carpeted solutions. Installation and uninstallation of the kick strap is super easy, and it's so compact. It's very easy to just tuck into a pocket of your cymbal bag or your bass drum case or something like that. So no worries there. Okay, so we've gotten through the test of all of the hard surface anchors, and what I'd like to do now is run you through the scoring of how each solution did. I think you can probably make up your own opinions about, which are front runners and which aren't. But I want to take you through my scores here real quick. We'll start with the lowest performer, which, as you can tell, was the Gibraltar anchor that pretty much did nothing, and so I gave it a big fat 0 in terms of its performance. Simplicity, it's not so simple. It's a little bit complex, so I give it a 4 out of 10. Durability seems like it would hold up quite nicely. Got a 7 there. Non-permanence or permanence, it's not the simplest to remove. You can just take the spikes off and leave the bracket on, but still it's kind of on there. So I give it a 7 there. Aesthetics, 5. Some people like the look of it on the front of their bass drum. I personally don't, so I just gave it a middle of the road score. Packaging, Gibraltar packaging is sometimes a hot mess, so I give it a 3. 5 in terms of setup, teardown, and packing. Again, middle of the road, because it's not something you might want to leave attached to the drum in a drum case. So there's a little bit of stuff to do there. Functionality, versatility. It is versatile because it is designed for hard surfaces and carpeted surfaces, but maybe not effectively versatile. I will include it in the next video, which runs through the carpet shootout of bass drum anchors. So you'll have to tune into part 2 to see how it fares on carpeted surfaces. So overall, the Gibraltar anchor got a 48% score. That's not good. And I think it all boils down to the fact that it took basically just 2 minutes to travel 1.5 feet on a hard surface. Next in line, or in third place out of 4, I guess you could say, would be the KBrakes. KBrakes performed very well. The bass drum didn't move an inch, and that is because the KBrakes, in conjunction with the grips product, did a very good job of adhering to that hard surface. Almost too good of a job, because it's kind of hard to pull up when you're tearing down. We give it an 8 for performance. Though I will say, from a playability perspective, I might take the score down a little bit, just because it wasn't very playable. The drum just bounced all over the place, as you saw. In terms of simplicity, this isn't a simple product. It's not one that you're going to set up and tear down really quickly if you have to change scenarios. So I give it a 6 there. Durability, the molded plastic looks, super solid. I think it would hold up over time. I'm slightly concerned about the wing nut assembly, so I gave it an 8 there. In terms of non-permanence, gave it a 7, because you're removing it is a bit of a chore, plus keeping track of hardware that you had to remove to put it on is also a bit of a chore. Aesthetics, I don't mind the look of them at all. I think they look great, and I think they're non-obtrusive in their look, so it would blend nicely to any kind of setup. Packaging, neither here nor there. There was some nice descriptions on the packaging, and it was solidly packed, easy to get into with a knife. If you didn't have a knife or scissors, it'd be a pain, but decent score on the packaging. Setup, teardown of these is probably its Achilles heel. I give it a 4, because you're just not going to want to fiddle with these at every single setup and teardown. I'm not convinced that you'd want to leave them on the spur in a drum case, although they do fold up nicely. But if you have to change your scenario and your carpet versus non-carpet scenario constantly, it's going to be a bit of a bear. And then lastly, versatility. It is a versatile product, that's for sure. I gave it a 7 there, for a total score of 69% for the KBrakes. Coming in second place is going to be your kick strap. I generally like the kick strap. It performed well. I gave it an 8. Again, the bass drum moves slightly at the first couple of hits, just because if you haven't put in all the tension into the cargo strap itself, it will move a bit. But once you have it set, it's set, and it almost double functions as a setup aid, because it'll measure the distance from your throne to your bass drum kind of automatically for you. So that's kind of cool. It's a simple product. A metal plate on one end and a hook on the other end, and a cargo strap in the middle. So it's simple. It feels durable. The plates are steel and the cargo strap feels solid. It's easy to remove, so it's not very permanent. The aesthetics do bug me a little bit, I have to be honest. Granted, it's behind the kit, so nobody will really ever see it, but it was my favorite to look down and look at some straps that are down there, but that's, shouldn't really matter, I suppose, but it kind of does. So I give it a 6 on the aesthetics. Packaging is a 6 because it was a rubber band and a baggie. There wasn't a lot of detail about the function of the product or anything. It left a little bit to be desired. Setup, teardown, and packing, super simple. Awesome product there. And then functionality and versatility, it's super versatile. So I gave it a 9 there because you could use it on not only a bass drum, but also a hi-hat stand, maybe a cowbell, or anything else that you have a pedal mounted to. Your slave pedal, you can use it for that as well. So really great. Good job, guys. Benson Music, go pick one up down in the link in the description below if you want one. Which leads me to number 1. Which leads me to number 1 in the hard surface bass drum anchor shootout. That would be your KBrakes. Again, thanks to the guys at KBrakes for sending me a sample. I really appreciate it. Same to the guys at Gibraltar for sending me those samples. Appreciate that as well. On the drum brakes, the performance was great. The drum didn't move at all, but it felt solid. It felt playable, and it wasn't really aggressive, if that makes sense. The simplicity, it's dead simple. You stick it on the ground, you put your drum on top, and you're done, basically. The durability of it, I mean, they feel solid in terms of the pad itself. There is the disclaimer that they include on packaging to not have your spikes extended from your spurs because that can obviously damage it, but felt very durable. It is not a permanent product, so the permanence aspect of it, you just take them off and see you later. The aesthetics of them are nice because they don't actually change the aesthetic of the drum set itself. They're just down on the surface, and you really wouldn't even know to look for them if you didn't know they were there. Packaging is simple and descriptive. There's it's nice and simple. Setup and teardown and packing. There's slightly lower marks here just because keeping the protective covers around so that they don't get full of dirt and things like that can be a little bit of a pain. So I give it a 7 there. Now, in terms of functionality and versatility, I did give it an 8 because while it is a hard surface only product, you can use it on stands or slave pedals or anything that you don't want to move along, basically. And it comes in a 4-pack, so that you can secure a couple things really with just 1 pack. So huge congratulations to Drum Brakes. You guys make a great product. It's super simple, and I'm really glad that you guys came out on top. So there you have it, guys. That is the shootout of the drum anchors for hard surfaces. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and like, subscribe with notifications on, because the next episode we are going to do part 2, where we're going to cover carpeted bass drum anchors, and then part 3 will come up where we'll do DIY solutions. So make sure you got those notifications on so that you know when those videos come out. Again, all the products are linked down in the description below. So if you want to pick one of them up, would appreciate you using one of my links. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you again soon.